So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the RDA and the Baltics webinar. My name is Liisa Lehtsalu, and I'm a Senior Science Officer with RDA Europe. This webinar today is part of a series of webinars that RDA Europe is organizing in collaboration with various regional data communities. So we just a few months ago, we had a webinar with RDA in Slovenia, and there will be more of them coming in the next few months. So if you're also interested in hearing about what is happening in other data communities across Europe, those webinars are a good chance to get a glimpse. But today we will, my slides forward? No. Today we will take a quick look at what RDA is and how to engage with RDA. Then we also talk about a bit about what is RDA Europe. We'll take a look at a few RDA groups, and then we hear from two members of the data community in Latvia and in Lithuania, who talk about their engagement and experience with RDA, and then there's time for Q&A. And after the end of the official webinar at 11 a.m. I will stay here and will stay around for about half an hour. We will open some breakout rooms, and there is an opportunity to have a community discussion so that you could share amongst yourself if you wish, or with other data professionals across the Baltics if you wish, but more of that at 11. Today's webinar was born out of discussions with Elixir in Estonia and with members of the new Latvian Data Student Network. And we also chose the topics with their input in mind. Just to introduce what RDA is doing and how all of you who might be also new to the data profession might get involved. So what is RDA? RDA is an international member-based organization that focuses on developing technical and social infrastructures, as well as community activities to reduce barriers to data sharing and reuse. It is based on members. Currently, there are about 15,000 members across the globe, so from 150 plus countries. The members are data professionals, they are researchers, they are scientists, they are repository providers, so anybody and everybody who has something to do with research data. And RDA is also discipline agnostic, so there are people from many different disciplines, from natural sciences, life sciences, to social sciences and humanities, as well as industry engaged in RDA. RDA works toward this vision of having an environment where researchers and innovators can openly share and reuse data. And in order to achieve that, as I said before, the RDA aims to build social and technical bridges that enable open sharing and reuse of data. We do this with some guiding principles in mind. These include openness, consensus, inclusivity, harmonization, community drivenness, and non-profit and technology neutralness. you might see from those principles or start seeing those principles that RDA is a bottom-up organization where we see members come together, work together, hash out differences together, and reach consensus on a given issue or a problem. Who are those people who are involved in RDA? So I've already mentioned that there are about 15,000 individual members at the moment. And those individual members, their main way of involvement or main role in RDA is to collaborate in groups to generate outputs. More about those in a bit. There are also organizational members to RDA. These are organizations that see value in the vision and the mission of RDA, and who sign up to support RDA, to be organizations that often are the first adopters of RDA outputs and recommendations, who the first to feedback on those recommendations and outputs, and whose employees or whose affiliates are active individual members in RDA. There are also regions who are involved in RDA. So, for example, RDA regions, we can talk about in Europe, RDA Netherlands or RDA UK or RDA France. But also RDA Lithuania is an earlier region of RDA, and RDA Estonia. And regions in the context of RDA are there to help bringing the global developments in RDA to local level, to localize them linguistically, culturally, but also to make sure that local developments and needs are amplified to the global level and are considered when developing outputs and recommendations. How does the RDA community collaborate? There are 3 ways for the community to collaborate. The first one is interest groups, which are exploratory groups where a group of like-minded, a group of people interested in a specific data sharing problem or specific infrastructure come together and try to identify problems. It usually starts from already a problem having been identified, and they focus on generating potential solutions to that problem. The other way of community collaborate is the working groups which are often born from interest groups. So if an interest group has, for example, identified a very specific, well-defined, circumscribed problem, the interest group often spins a working group that then develops specific tools or policies or practices that can be adopted to resolve that sad problem. And the working groups, in contrast to the interest groups, working groups also have a clearly defined lifespan. They are 12 to 18-month working groups, and at the end of that period, they have to produce a recommendation that also has to be, in order to be a recommendation, has to be adopted by at least 3 organizations. And then finally, within RDA, there are also communities of practice that are coordinating around a specific topic, raising awareness around that topic. So they are more focused on awareness raising and less on producing specific outputs. I have on the slides, and the slides will be also shared. You will find also links to where you can find the full list of all interest and working groups. What do RDA members do? So RDA members collaborate across the globe. They create and join community-driven RDA groups. I mentioned before that RDA is bottom-up. This means that any member can actually start an interest on the working group. There is no limit to that, so you might join today and start working towards developing an interest or working group tomorrow, basically. Members tackle infrastructure and data sharing challenges. They exchange knowledge. They discuss barriers and potential solutions, explore and define policies, test and harmonize standards, and through all of this, enhance and facilitate global data sharing and reuse. Why you might consider joining as an individual member is to contribute to these developments, both technical and social, to become part of a global community and expand your professional network, to create and access and adopt RDA recommendations and outputs. Although anybody can access and adopt outputs, as a member, the benefit really is that you can be part of creating those outputs. As members, you receive regular updates from the work of the community. You gain expertise in data-related topics through your participation in the groups and regular interchange with other members of those groups, with colleagues from across the world. And you're invited to participate in community events like webinars, including, for example, this webinar, workshops, plenaries, and so on. Individual membership is free, so anybody can sign up at any time. There's also our organizational and regional members. For them, there are specific governance bodies within RDA that allow organizational and regional members to contribute to the steering and defining the priorities and next steps of the RDA. And as you can see, there are also other benefits to being either a regional or an organizational member. I also mentioned, and you see in the corner of the slides, RDA Europe. RDA Europe is the European arm of RDA Global. RDA Europe is also a region within the RDA, which aims to engage the various European data communities, facilitate exchange between those European data communities, and cross-fertilization, by which we mean that we aim to share data-related solutions from one community to another, allow communities to learn from one another, and allow communities to define and identify shared issues that they could tackle together. We also are working towards RDA Europe Training Academy that will be targeting data professionals in Europe, and that will be announced very shortly within the next few weeks. And we are also providing facilitation service to working groups. And this facilitation service, some of you might have heard, comes or started through the RDA Tiger project, which is a Horizon Europe funded project that supports RDA and its partners, GoData, eScience Center in the Netherlands, and DANS in Netherlands, to provide services to RDA working groups that work towards solutions that are EOSC relevant. So it's RDA groups that contribute directly or indirectly to the development of the European Open Science Cloud. As part of Tiger, we also offer cascading grants, and one of those calls is currently open. And this cascading grant it might be of interest to everybody also in this virtual room here, because the cascading grant supports anybody who wishes to adopt an RDA output and recommendation, adopt and implement those in your own context. So if you're interested, please do check it out. The application deadline is in a month's time, so there's plenty of time to prepare an application. Very briefly about RDA interest and working groups. So if you're interested in figuring out where you could get involved, the first step would be to go to the RDA group directory and search for what is there, basically using keyword search, or you can see on the slide at the top of the left-hand side of the directory also has some defined filtering that you can use to find the groups that might be of interest to you. I briefly wanted to highlight a couple of groups that may be of interest to the participants today. First, two groups around policy development, the RDA Research Data Policy Interest Group, and the RDA and Research Software Alliance Policies in Research Organizations for Research Software Working Group. There's a space missing there. I'm sorry about that. So the Research Data Policy Interest Group provides a forum where RDA members can share, collaborate, and connect around research data policies. The group started as more focused on funders and publishers, but they have recently reorganized and now are also very much focusing on institutional research data policies. So if you're in the process of policy development, it might be something to check out. And the RDA and Research Software Alliances shared working group provides resources and guidelines. I think they are about 12 months into their 18-month work period. So they're starting to actually develop, they're starting to finalize their guidelines around research software policies in research performing organizations. So again, if you're in a stage where you're developing policy for your organization, there will be guidelines coming out that might help you think how you include research software policies in your policy development. The other two groups that I wanted to highlight, also with nod towards the new Latvian Data Steward Network, are two groups that focus on professionalizing data stewardship. There's the RDA Professionalizing Data Stewardship Interest Group and the RDA Data Steward Career Tracks Working Group. The Professionalizing Data Steward Interest Group it's a very large interest group that has a couple of different foci. both focusing on data stewardship as a service as well as data stewardship as a career. And there's also a strong network focus on there with a task group dedicated to data steward networks. So if you are interested in data stewardship in any shape or form, this interest group can be a forum to discuss data stewardship broadly. And spinning out from this interest group is a new data steward career tracks working group that will focus specifically on developing a methodology for data steward persona development and linking those personas into career tracks with an aim to ensure that there are clearly defined career paths available for data stewards, and that all data stewards that are recruited are also able to continue to grow and prosper in this profession. And with this, I put here again, the image of the directory, because this was just a very quick glimpse on 4 groups, but there are around over 60 working groups and over 60 interest groups. So something for everyone, basically, from policy to data stewardship professionalization to ontologies, controlled vocabularies, both at discipline agnostic, but also at very disciplinary level, to repositories, repository certification, and so on. And we will also hear about a few of those interesting working groups in the next 2 presentations. We have first Vaidas Markevičius from Kaunas University of Technology talking about his engagement with the RDA. Vaidas, I think I saw you here, so I'll just ask you to jump in.
Sure, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. So it's very nice that I was invited to talk about my experience with working with the RDA. Next slide, please. So I am coordinator of Lithuanian Data Archive for Social Sciences and Humanities. You have the link to the archive repository. We started this archive a long time ago. Next year it will be 20 years that we are working on it. I started from the beginning. And speaking about the profile that may be relevant for you to hear, I identified 4 major works that needed to be done to establish working data archive. Of course, the working data archive is moving target. It's never-ending story, and different standards and ways to make research data openly available, better means to do that, measures to do that. They're always improving and changing, and RDA also plays a big role there. So, but anyway, it's working, and these 4 things that mattered the most was to establish technical infrastructure. Of course, you need to have repository software installed and working then. And I think the most important thing is to define and implement data curation processes and workflows, right? So how do you curate the data? How do you curate metadata and so on and so forth? So here you have a lot of standards these days. In 2006, 2008, there was no RDA. There were just some sporadic initiatives, it was good that social science data archives had umbrella organization CESDA, which worked on those standards, for example, and we gained experience. These days, it would be much easier to establish an archive when you have these standards already set out. You can read here and there everything about what you should do. Okay, so if you want to describe your data in social sciences, you have to use DDI standard. At that time, it was like, okay, what do we do? Right? So you learn from other archives. The way of learning was much steeper, right? Of course, then we needed to obtain and publish data, teach, engage our users and researchers. This is, again, moving targets, all these 4 activities, and we are working on them constantly. So my engagement, next slide, please. My engagement with the RDA started in 2019, 2020, when I participated in a project activities of RDA National Node Lithuania. It was funded via Horizon 2020 project RDA Europe 4.0. You see on the slide that we aimed to promote research data management in Lithuania, adapt and implement some recommendations from RDA, improve legal framework, infrastructure for research, disseminate and advance research data practice in Lithuania. So the project was, I think, about a year. We organized various events of raising awareness on importance of research data management, best practices, and so on. My contribution was mostly related to promotion of research data management and dissemination of advanced research data practices in Lithuania. So I shared my knowledge of what I learned myself establishing LIDA archive and learning all the things about data creation and so on. And next slide, please. Then I became interested in some of the work groups and interest groups. I listed them here, so I will not go into details. But another thing that I think Lisa didn't mention is that RDA has virtual and face-to-face plenaries twice a year, where research data stewards, managers, and people that are interested in this topic meet, have sessions, and so on and so forth. So we presented a poster there on, we had a big project, which is still ongoing, I think, is collecting historical data of Baltic countries. We have a very big collection, and we needed to improve some standards, I think, in order to being able to publish that data with rich metadata. So we had a poster on that. Next slide, please. And then we found during this project that there are recommendations and outputs. So we looked into them and started implementing them. Again, as I said, this is a moving targets always. So here I listed some, and the next slide, some of them we worked on more closely. So for example, most important engagement with RDA to date is a project that we were involved in. It was RDA Ask Future Open Calls program, and we had this project on framework for increased discoverability of social science data objects in European Open Science Cloud Portal Service Catalog. So we tried to take some recommendation of RDA, some output of RDA, and try to showcase how it might work in practice, right? So you see here in blue guidelines for publishing structured metadata on the web. RDA recommendation and outcome data discovery paradigms, user requirements, and recommendations for data repositories, right? So the idea in these recommendations is what researchers want from data repository to be in the descriptions, right? Do we need description about this or that? What is important? So here is formal description of our aims, but I would like, next slide please, to make it more mundane, right? So we have fair guiding principles and findability, and F2 says that we need good metadata, right? If we want to fulfill F2, we need to have good metadata, but the question is, and it is not defined till the date, what is good metadata? In our reusability section, it says that it has to be, it has to follow community standards. So for example, social sciences have the way to describe their data, and physics has its own standards, right? So they are different. So our idea was to look into social science data objects to find out which properties are most important in describing them, and then to basically improve existing standard, which was, I guess, OpenAIRE, but OpenAIRE follows DataCite metadata schema when describing data sets. So it was related. So to showcase how we can increase or improve descriptions of DataCite standard and make the data sets and metadata more fair, so to speak, right? So here you see the requirements on the slide of what researchers want, right? And so we wanted to meet those requirements or wants, wishes. Next slide, please. So we looked into the best practices, then tried to create this technical solution, which we implemented taking, in simple terms, like taking data from our archive and putting it into generic Lithuanian virtual library catalog and showing metadata that is more rich than you usually would get in virtual library, right? So, which is mostly related to books and journals and so on and so forth. So, if you look at some LIDA data sets that you find on Lithuania Virtual Library, it has extended metadata, for example, showing number of survey respondents in survey data, or how the survey was conducted, how the sampling was conducted, and so on and so forth. Right. So here are some links. I think you will get these slides, so you will be able to look into it. There is even an example showing how to proceed to see some 6 steps, how to see how it works, right? This solution, right? Next slide, please. And as a byproduct, we created something which we called vocabulary for major data types of social science data objects. And we use it in our repository to create catalogs of our data, right? So we have survey data, we have aggregated data, encoded data, textual data. And this was a byproduct that we actually use, right? So these two things are real solutions that work They are not just to showcase something which may be a recommendation for others, but to actually use them, right? And next slide. Most recent engagement that we finished yesterday was participation in free data repository metadata cohort exercise. I'm not sure why it is called cohort exercise. What does that mean? But the idea is that RDA has a working group, common descriptive attributes of research data repositories, DROG, right? And their task or target is to create common descriptive attributes that should be used, not could be, but should be used to describe research data repositories, right? And here are these 7 attributes. They are quite general. They are quite good, well described. Next slide, please. So RDA worked with refreedata.org, which is actual repository which contains more than 3,000 descriptions of repositories all around the world. And they have their own metadata scheme with 44 properties and sub-properties, which they want to align with RDA recommendation, right? So our task was to look into how well this works, right? How good is metadata scheme of refreedata.org? How well described are attributes for research data repositories in the RDA document? And we provided some feedback. So in general, it was useful both for RDA, refreedata. It was helpful for us to think about the information that we provide about our archive to the users, what is important for them, what we should include into our descriptions, and so on and so forth. Right. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vitas, for this excellent overview of how a repository can work with RDA outputs and recommendations, and what does this adoption, what does it mean, and how it looks like. So thank you for that. And now I invite Ingmars Kreismanis from Riga Stradnis University to talk about his experience with the RDA.
So it's nice to see many familiar faces. So at the moment, I'm working at Riga Stradins University, and I'm a project manager at the Social Sciences Research Center, and also an expert in EATRIS Connect Horizon Europe project, which is a project for personalized medicine research infrastructures, and also a national contact point for CESDA. So we recently became national partners, not yet members of CESDA. And before I was a data steward in Riga Stradins University, and for some time I was the only one in Latvia, but now we have a network, which I'm happy about. And yeah, please, the next slide. So basically my engagement with the RDA was, it was one of the first things when I started to work as a data steward in 2022. So I had to, because there was no information about that in Latvia, so I had to start somewhere. So I just found out there is a Research Data Alliance, and I registered there individually and then started to explore. That's how I found out about the courses at Vienna University, where I got my certificate, and also where I found out about many events, and also about the project call, where I also had a grant just as Vidas, where we met the first time. And yeah, so it's I think it's sometimes just useful if you are not so familiar with the field, that you just browse around the interest groups and working groups, and then there's a recommendations and outputs repository, or how to call it, and also within the groups you can see they have chats and things like that, and you can just contact members if you think that they would have expertise which you don't have yet, and so on. So please, the next slide. Yeah, so one of the examples is within our doctoral school, I was organizing webinars about for research data management, both in social sciences and also medical and biomedical sciences, and I wasn't sure if I could yet be an expert in both of the fields, so I was looking for some experts, and I used the social science research data group and also the group for biomedical research data, and just asked, like, can you recommend me someone? And then I got quite many recommendations, so I could like assess which one would be the most suitable for me. And for example, yes, there was one webinar about applying fair data principles in social sciences by Janis Štebe from Slovenia, and I think it was quite successful. So the next slide, please. Yeah, and just as Vidas, I had this small grant under US Future project, and the project was co-host, I think, co-coordinated by RDA also, and we had quite many meetings, I think monthly or sometimes even bi-weekly, and it was quite useful because the representative from the RDA was suggesting us pathways to improve the project, to contact some people who would be, for example, specialists in metadata wrangling and things like that. And yeah, I even found out about a metadata wrangler scheme tool to do that, and it was useful too. And of course, I got to know a wider network of professionals in the field. The next slide, please. Yeah, then RDA plenaries. So I attended the one in Gothenburg in Sweden, and it was quite useful because there are literally like 800 people, at least at that plenary there were, and it was a big opportunity for networking, also for meeting people who sometimes don't answer emails, and then I can just meet them and confront them and then get things done, which was also useful. And I was introduced to Dataverse community. So there were people also from the US who are like leading the community, and from many other countries, which was useful because we have also Dataverse repository, and we met face to face, and then it was much more easier to communicate with them virtually, and and to basically to get practical practical suggestions how to proceed with improvements in Dataverse, and not to make more problems, and yeah, also new ideas for projects, and what was important to meet the discipline specific experts. So my university is usually interested in social sciences and medical and biomedical sciences, but there are experts also from humanities, from climate research, and many other fields. So it was very useful. Please, next slide. Yeah, and as there are many people from Latvian Data Steward Network, but perhaps it would be useful for Lithuania and Estonia. I was involved in kickstarting the network, and so I used many of the interested working groups to give suggestions for job descriptions of the data curators, to put up the list of sources for self-learning, to invite experts, to give basically lectures or webinars on the topics we are interested in, and of course also to find new field-specific communities. And preparation of training schedule. So that was very useful, both to find just recommendations and experts, but also to connect with the people. And I perhaps forgot to tell, so I think recently my university adopted the research data management policy, and I was the one who started to do that, and I also used the recommendations from health research organizations policy group, something like that. I forgot to mention it, but that was useful because we are mostly health-oriented university, and they had a specific working group for that, so that was very useful to use their recommendations. I don't know if there is a next slide. No, yeah, thank you. So.
Thank you. Paldies, that's my Latvian accent as a cross-border person. Thank you so much for highlighting the networking side and the value of networking, and I think you have exploited it to its max. It's really nice to hear about that. And now, finally, the floor is yours. So if you have questions, comments, want to share your own experiences, very welcome to do so. If you just raise your hand, that would be great, because otherwise I cannot see. Or maybe until you think of questions or comments, I'll ask a quick raise of hands or wave if you are already involved in an RDA interest group or a working group. If you have, become an individual member and have engaged with a group, just raise your hand just to get a sense. So Vidas and Amos, I assume. I can also raise my hand. I think my own experience, because I joined RDA Europe last year, and before that I was a data steward in a research performing organization, and had a journey much like Ingmar's, actually, of being in, it was 2018, being given this stack of documents and being like, hey, you're now our new open science person, see what to do with this. And started to look for information and stumbled upon RDA and got involved like this by, using the RDA network, finding connections, contacting people to ask, hey, how are you doing things? Why are you doing them like this? What are the how does it work for you? Does it work for you? And so on. So it was very useful for a quick study. Hilary, I see that your hand is up.
Yes, I had a question about joining the different RDA work groups or interest groups. So I have went to the page, clicked join, and then a lot of times nothing happens. How active are all the groups, and what is the best way of joining, or I don't know, poking somebody so you can also join the meetings? Or
that is a really good question, and it really depends from group to group how active they are on the website. In theory, they should all announce their meetings on the website. In practice, it doesn't necessarily always happen. So my recommendation is that if you find an interest or a working group that you're interested in, you go to their website, and on the landing page, there's a list of co-chairs of any group. And just email or contact the co-chairs. You can contact them by clicking on their name and sending a message to them and asking them, I'm interested in joining. What is the regular meeting schedule? How can I get involved? This is the best way to do it, to make sure that you don't lose any information somewhere, or that you have landed upon a group that doesn't actively use the RDA website to communicate, but might have a Slack channel where they communicate, or another way of communication. So once you identify a group, contact the co-chairs. Dinah, what's next?
Yes, thanks, Lisa, for putting together the event. I was curious, in the beginning you mentioned that also organizations can join RDA in some capacity. I was just wondering, how does that usually happen, and what role the organizations take when they join RDA?
So organizational membership is available. When individual membership is free, there is a fee for organizational members. The organizational members, representatives from them become part of the RDA governance structures. So are really, on the one hand, get first-hand information about what's happening, what the next strategic directions are, and so on. But importantly, can also contribute to shaping those. So, a very personal opinion, but the more diverse the organizational membership body is, the better, because then there's more voices heard and more concerns included. The organizational members then are also usually organizations are very actively interested in adopting RDA outputs and recommendations, in being the first adopters, in providing feedback, for example. So in a way, how Vaidas talked about using some of the recommendations and outputs in LIDA, that is in a way a typical organizational member might act as well. And then there's some benefits. So if, for example, if you have a number of employees or affiliates who regularly attend the plenaries, there are discounts on plenaries, so it might start making sense, and things like that. But if you're interested, please be in touch, and we'll talk about it more in detail. Vaidas, you also have your hand up.
It's just a follow-up on Claudia's question. Would you say that the work groups are more active than interest groups?
I wouldn't give a blanket statement like this, but I think by the nature of the working group makes them more active, because there's the working group is time bound, so working groups have to produce an output or a recommendation in up to 18 months. They are usually much more specific in their scope. And if you noticed on the slides where I had brief interest a couple of working groups and interest groups, the working groups were always smaller in terms of membership number, but it is because of the scope. It's very specific scope. They then collect really experts on that particular problem or an issue, who are very interested and motivated for that 12 to 18 month period to find a solution or develop a recommendation around that issue. And that's why I think naturally they might be slightly more active. And indeed, you have working groups who have like a weekly meeting schedule or a bi-weekly meeting schedule, so it can get quite intense. Where interest groups oftentimes are more exploratory. They're more a forum for identifying challenges, thinking about what the solution could be without developing the solution, because then they would go and spin a working group to develop that solution. And I think interest groups might also go through times of great activity and times of slower activity. Here I can say, as a co-chair of the Professionalizing Data Stewardship interest group, that we had a 2-year period of intense activity, and for the last year and a half it's been much slower. It's been a bit of soul searching in terms of where the interest group wants to go next. And we anticipate now in the next, before summer, to start again with a more defined activities. So it goes through those ebbs and flows. I think we have hit the hour. So what I wanted to do now, this is the end of the official part of the webinar. So I also ask Genevieve to stop the recording.